Hello, and welcome to an installment of the FIT Soul Club Oral History Project, a program at Fashion Institute of Technology, one of 64 institutions that comprise the State University of New York. This project is generously funded by FIT President Joyce F. Brown through her Diversity Grant Initiative. We also want to give a real recognition to Andrea Klein, Catalog Associate, and Karen Trevette, Associate Professor and Head of Special Collections in College Archives, both of the Gladys Marcus Library here at FIT. I am Tor Orange, Director of the Office of Educational Opportunity Programs. The Soul Club of FIT was created and organized by Clara Branch, a member of the FIT community following the death of Dr. Martin Luther King. The resulting interview will be made available via the FIT Library's website platform, Archive on Demand. The digital file and its transcription will become part of the official College Archives, the library's unit of special collections, and the College Archives administers the FIT oral history programs. So we are coming to you today from the FIT campus on West 27th Street in Manhattan, New York City. It is October 26th and the time is 10:30 a.m. We have the honor, or I have the honor and privilege of being joined today by my dear friend, collaborator, sometimes partner in crime, Mr. Leonard Davis. Welcome.
Welcome. Good morning.
I want to start, Leonard, with a somewhat different approach to the interview. We love quotes.
Yes.
We share them almost daily.
Right.
The quote is, "Life becomes more meaningful when we realize the simple fact that we will never get the same moment twice."
Excellent. Excellent intro.
And so I want to begin this interview by asking you, what moment would you redo if you could?
Redo with regret, in a regretful way?
No, redo in terms of its impact on your career,
Yeah.
your impact as a designer. We only get that moment once. But if you could redo a moment, what
Well, relive
would it
it.
be?
Relive that moment. Okay, relive that one, the most wonderful experience. You will be surprised to know that that experience happened here at the Fashion Institute, and that happened as a result of Clara Branch. You know, as we students come here right from high school at age 17, 18, the world is your oyster. You come here to find yourself. And I came from a family that was given to academia in terms of college, from high school to college. And I was the odd person in my family, because I was not an academic. And so I was an artist, and they didn't know much about that, that personality or that person. So I was the weird one there. And when I arrived at FIT, I suddenly found all of my fellow artists, fellow odd people. And I was thinking, gosh, hi everybody. You all look just like me. And I was suddenly home. And as we started to socialize, I started to meet people and make friends and get more and more and more comfortable with myself, because that's what it's all about, self-discovery. Then I started meeting teachers and mentors and the people who were here to guide us, if you will. And not knowing that, just knowing that you're just meeting people. And meeting other students, fellow students who were saying, it's like the road to the mountain, where are you going? It's like, come with me, I'm going to the choir rehearsal. What choir is that? Come on. And I would join the choir, and I joined this. So by and large, I came to know about this soul club, the Black Student Union, and what was going on. And that, of course, led to, of course, you had to know Miss Clara Branch, who's leading the way. And that moment for me was knowing about the fashion show. Being different, once again, not the normal person, unfortunately. I saw fashion from a different perspective. I saw the fashion show from a different perspective because we as designers are all backstage fussing over our dresses. I don't care about anything else. I care about my dress. I just want my one thing to come out and just be spectacular. But I saw it from an audience perspective, from a much broader perspective, the fashion show, the production. And I was wondering, why is this boring? Each person would light up when their one dress would come out in the audience. But what did that mean to the overall audience? Well, I had the privilege of going to an ebony fashion fair and seeing the one and only Audrey Smalls, and realizing the effect and the
And who was she? Just for
Audrey
the
Smalls,
sake of the
the
audience.
commentator for ebony fashion fair.
Is she ever?
And she was the show.
Yes.
As much as the fashions, okay, which of course is what you came to see, the dynamic fashions from Europe, from the masters. But it required a little bit more than that because it's still, you're putting on a production. You know what I'm saying? Presentation is everything, as they say. And I saw that and I thought, so I came back to FIT and I wondered, what are we missing? Why don't our shows have that dynamism, okay, in addition to the wonderful clothing? So I spoke to Miss Branch one day as a criticism, if you will, as a comment. Criticism, it's like I don't have the authority to criticize, who am I? But I brought that to her. Well, it was a day that they were making decisions. And they were determining how the show was going to be staged, this upcoming show, in 1970. And I was just a newbie at FIT, just joining the crowd, just finding my way, at age 18, Some dynamic people were there. And I went to her with regard to the commentary of the show. And I said, why don't they have something more dynamic? And so another person heard me, a girl named Arnice Russell, I think her name was. She had just become awarded won the contest for Miss Black America that year. She was not particularly dynamic. Woo! There was another fellow named Dwight Boyd or Bird, or something like that. He was an academic. Sharp, well-spoken, sharp. And they sort of put their hats in the ring and said, well, Miss Branch, I thought I approached you about doing a commentary. And the other person said, well, I approached you as well. So then she was in a sort of a dilemma, and then she says, well, and so there I was, this big compared to these guys. And I felt, well, of course I had no chance, but I was like, do you know what she did? She turned around and she says, you know what, guys? I'm going to split the apple. I'm going to split the show into 3 sections, and each one of you will have an opportunity to commentate. That was a breakthrough moment for me. I was nobody.
To include you.
Yeah.
Yes.
In this bunch, I was nobody. And I was like, Jesus, really? Well, okay, now, have I bitten off more than I could chew? I went home and studied. I went home and just finessed. I just got crazy. But it was a breakthrough moment for me because I came to the show prepared. We drew straws or whatever. So I was in the middle. So Arnice opened the show. She started up with the commentary. And then with my background of Ebony Fashion Fair and how dynamic Audrey Smalls was, I took that as my example.
You had a vision of what it could be.
So then, I was backstage pacing, and then they were like, you're up. Jesus. So I walked out there, said good evening, and my first designer was Willie Smith. And I started out talking, and I don't know what came to me, I don't know. Because I had something written down, but another spirit came to me and just said, talk. And I started talking about he had a plaid outfit. And I said, you know what, from fashion training, the judgment of a plaid, how to evaluate the value of a plaid outfit. The plaids have to match. That's the integrity of a plaid outfit. If it matches across, if the sleeves at the front, the back, the side seams, the plaid matches all the way around. And I was silent from that moment. I said, did you get my point? Everybody went, yes, because it was matched. You know, so from that point on, I don't know what else I said, whatever. But that was, everybody was like crazy. And that was at the end of my segment. Now, this guy, who was really the most dynamic of the three of us, was yet to come to follow that. And backstage, he was begging me, please go back out there. I can't.
Hard to follow that act.
But you know what? To answer your question, I think that was my day of arrival for myself. And I think it explains something to me about Clara Branch and her role. Because I'm gonna tell you something. I spiritually, I see it's the Moses designation. And you know the story of Moses in the Bible? Moses' designation was to lead them to the promised land, but you're not going to go. Clara Branch was like that. She was not looking for recognition, fame, fortune. She wasn't looking for, she was in her place. And she was happy and comfortable and complacent with who she was and where she was. Her job was to lead us.
To move you forward.
To set the table and let us find ourselves there. And so that's what she created, that platform for us. And so the Soul Club was just that. She was very nurturing. She was very approachable, very understanding, and very private. Because you know when you're 18, everything is all about intimidation, bullying. You're vulnerable, you know, and you don't know, but you are wide open. You come through, if something's funny, you just laugh, you know, and then everybody looks back at you, oh, I should have laughed, you know.
Taking your cues from, right.
But she would pull you aside privately and tell you, okay, not that, not this, you know, and you're like motherly, you know, and so now she had an assistant named Lotus who was there. He was a bit of a jokester, but she had a fabric room. So what she was able to do was to bring young people into the fold, to help you if you were struggling financially, if you were struggling with just your studies. I'm from Washington, D.C., not from New York. So I came with all kinds of expectations.
Being in the big city.
Yes.
On your own.
On my own. In the 70s. Late 60s, 70s. And so civil rights was a rage. People were just coming back from the Vietnam War. All kinds of crazy things were going on in the world. Drugs was on the scene. This was the disco era. Okay, we were wearing bell bottoms and platform shoes. Music was raging. All of the clubs were raging. There was a lot of distraction. A lot going on at that time for me to have been in New York for the first time and away from home, away from any kind of restrictions or guidance. You could get up in the morning and come to school if you want to.
Or not.
You could sleep all day. Mom is not going to knock on your bedroom door and say, get out, you know. No one was there to harass me. So you're really on your own for the first time. But all of those teachings from home were in my ear, on my, you know, you better get up, you better do well, you better, you know, whatever. And so all of that was there. So all of that comes with you.
It's a great segue into another quote. Behind every strong person is a story that gave them no choice.
Yeah.
Share with us what the beginnings were, what messages you did receive. Who were the guiding forces behind you in terms of this path? You've had a very storied career in fashion and in the industry.
Right.
What were the beginnings?
Well,
What were the strong
the
voices?
strong voices, obviously from home, from my upbringing, whatever, because my mom and dad were hard workers. They were educated people. My father was a postal supervisor, and my mother was a nurse. And they came, we humble beginnings, and all, but ambitious.
From?
Washington, D.C. Well, my mother was from
Louisiana,
Louisiana.
yes, yes.
Okay, rural Louisiana.
Yes.
She went to Southern University and, on up and came to Washington during the war, what, the 50s?
Probably World War II.
Two, yeah. And I worked as an elevator operator and wanted more and worked in, wanted more and wanted more and wanted more. Didn't want to live in an apartment, wanted to buy a house. Ambitious. And my father, so that was their meeting place. That they were both wanted more. They were ambitious and they wanted to have a family and they wanted their family to do well. So that was what was put into us to go forward. My brother Jordan was first.
2 siblings.
Yeah, three.
3.
Three of us. Boys, all boys. And so my father was super proud of his boys, and he wanted us all to excel, and he did anything and everything. And to his credit, my father worked 3 jobs. Okay, he drove a taxi cab at night, he worked at the post office during the day, and he also worked at a parking garage in his part-time, just to get that mortgage money, which at the time was $123 a month. And they struggled.
Yes.
The two of them struggled to have that money every month for the mortgage, not to mention whatever. And 3 boys who were eating food just like garbage.
Breathing.
As soon as they could get it in, we would absorb, we would just inhale that food as quickly. And my mother would go, "What happened to the turkey?" What is this? Eat it up and spit out the bones. Like we were just, okay, whatever. But the point is, that was my early incentive with the family, strong family structure. My father had 10 brothers and sisters, 5 boys and 5 girls. So, good, strong family background, all of that, the unit. And that was what brought me forward. We were heavily into the church. My father was a Mason. My mother was an Eastern Star, so they belonged to those fraternal organizations. The support from all of that was there. So a lot of support and a lot of encouragement came with me, okay? So when I reached FIT, I was...
High school. And before, when did you first take note that you had this gift, that you had a talent?
My mother, Jesus Christ, my mother, okay, I set out going to be, okay, I got it now. I want to be a writer. I think I got it now. I'm going to be a writer. So in high school, well, before I got the writing, I was a musician. But before I was a musician, I was going to be an electrician. So from junior high school, I didn't want to go to a neighborhood high school. I went to a trade school to learn electronics.
Interesting.
And then I started with the radios and whatever like that. And then I thought, well, not really. Okay, so then I turned around and said, okay, fine, music. Now I got it, music. And I was trying to do, and I go, no. And for music, I turned around and realized, oh gosh, no, I don't know if that's really for me or whatnot. Writing. So what happened was I went to a meeting in high school and they had a newspaper, the high school newspaper, and they were asking for suggestions. Now me talking music, I was like, hey, we should have a top 10 record list in the newspaper. People will read that. I'm thinking, somebody already had that category covered. My next suggestion was fashion. Everybody likes to wear clothes. We should have a fashion column. Now, no one has suggested that. That's your baby. You do it. I didn't think about fashion. But I just wanted to write about, So another girl who was there, Lynn, she was doing some little illustrations or some little sketches or whatever. So I said, I tell you what, Lynn, you do the sketches, I'll write the captions. Okay, we're going to call our column L&L Fashions. And that was fabulous. So she did her little drawings, little scratches, little drawings, whatever, and then I would write. And I would go to Vogue magazines and look to see how to describe things, and I would write these captions or whatever. This is my initial
brainstorm
into writing, my dream. Now I'm going to be a fabulous writer. She bailed out after the second, third time. She was like, I'm tired of doing this. No, we had this column, this fashion column. She said, I'm done. I'm done. I wasn't going to let my. So I took one of her sketches and put it on the glass on the window and traced over it. Just to do, so that my dream wouldn't die. I was just trying to, your mother can just convince you
You're the
to
most
eat your
brilliant.
vegetables, to wear this, not do that. You can sing, mom can do anything. I'm there tracing over it, just desperately trying to keep my column alive. And she's going, oh, that's amazing. And I said, what? I love that. I want to have that made. Mom, it's nothing. It's a pair of pants. It's nothing. No, you're very talented. No, I'm tracing. And she goes, no, it's beautiful. Oh, get out of here. So then the next week I had to do it again, and the week after that I had to do it again.
Are you suggesting that it was not an organic kind of discovery for you? That's amazing.
Not in that regard.
That's amazing.
And I kept doing it and gained an interest in, because I had to start following styles and seeing what styles were so that I could come up with something new, with something different to keep my column going. And the more I did this, the more enthusiastic my mother got. And then the lady who lived next door to us was a seamstress, and my mother would go on the front porch and lean over, Pauline, come in, take a look at what he just did. And Pauline would go, that's wonderful. I didn't know that you were talented. I'm not talented. I just want to write the column. And they were like, so they convinced me that I was doing something. And I go, it is? It's really something? Yeah. So I'm going to make that skirt. I love that skirt. I'm going to make it.
How did you find out about FIT?
Well, from there, because I was in high school, so from there, I started taking courses in art, because now I've abandoned my electronics because that was the thing of the past. Music didn't work out. So now, and the writing turned into art. So
And the art had a little traction.
yeah. So, and mom is there going, hey everybody, my son is an artist. And everybody go, wonderful. Not me. I go, okay, yes, I guess so. So I just took on the mantle that was sort of just being given to me, and it was to show us some of your, go get your sketches and show the people. And I was like, well, here they are. And I go, wonderful. So I was like, well, okay. So then I just sort of, it was a discovery in that regard. I was like, okay, I guess I've arrived. I guess that's my gift. And so I kept going, and so then then my brother went off to college, and then my father turns to me and goes, okay, you're next. What do you want to do? I applied to FIT, Parsons, and Pratt. I got accepted to Pratt and FIT. And I just sort of just said, shoot, FIT, just sort of a random spin of the dice.
A vision for yourself as being a designer, or just looking to see how far you could write it?
I was Christian Dior by that time. So I came to conquer and slay. I showed the first day of school. Well, you have to come for a portfolio evaluation.
Yes.
So I had a portfolio. I had created my art teacher. No, I took art in my last year of high school. First time taking art, and the teacher realized that I had a talent. My art teacher did. So she sort of just ignored the rest of the knuckleheads who were there. Not ignored, but you know what I'm saying? She focused on me. And so she had me do all kinds of various art techniques or whatever. That year, for my high school, they have to enter a high school citywide competition. And so they submit artwork from their students. Each high school submits for the citywide art competition. I won first prize and second prize.
Say no more.
So
Say no more.
I was there, and so and then she encouraged me. What do you want to do now? And I said, and she helped me prepare my portfolio. I came to New York for the portfolio evaluation. First time in New York, Jesus Christ. And my parents came up, and we all stood there, and they said, "Okay, you're in." Whew. So now I'm going to FIT starting in September. Boom. So it just happened fast track. It just suddenly happened. I would just onto it.
Paint the picture of what you encountered and embraced at FIT. I remember in some of our conversations you sharing how on 27th Street, I think it was maybe one building then, it was the Feldman building, and that there were these furriers.
Yeah.
Which is hard to even envision now, right?
Yes.
Paint the picture of what you encountered when you arrived, and talk a little bit about what life was like in the minority as a black student.
Yes. So at that time, yes, you're right. There was one building, the
See?
C building with the arch.
Feldman, right?
Yeah. That was it. That was all. That was FIT sum total. All of there was, and all the buildings, that were adjacent to that and across the street were furriers. It was the fur. It still is to some extent the fur district. All right, the plant district, the fur district. Yeah, as New York is laid out. So it was still very much so the fur district, and FIT nestled in that. Now, Fashion High School was a block away.
Yes.
So there was, and then I was staying on 23rd Street. Okay.
Because there were no
There
dormitories.
was no dorm, so I stayed at the YMCA on 23rd Street. FIT had an agreement for male students that could stay there. I think it was $25 a month. Which I thought was a fortune at the time. Well, my father paid it, so I didn't know. But anyway, so you could get a room there. So I was there. So again, it's what, 1 block, 2 blocks away, or whatever. So just walk around the corner, whatever. But the girls stayed at the dorm, which was there. So that was FIT sum total. When I walked in the front door, the first person I met was Ronnie Hodges, a fashion designer. At the door, I just walked in the door, and this person just walks across from me and goes, "Hi," and I go, "Hi." I didn't know a soul, because I was happy to just welcoming anybody, and that was for some reason the first person who was lost and said, "I'm supposed to register for fashion design. Do you know where to go?" And I said, "No, but I'm registering for fashion." So now I was following this person. Both of us were lost, but we were lifetime friends.
Even now.
Well, he passed away just recently, but that's been a total friend for life from that day. Okay. In the event, but again, it was a welcoming atmosphere, and again, because I felt odd from where I had come from, and I said it was it submerged into a place of artists. And people just flying across the room and wearing whatever they wanted to wear and doing and whatever. And I was like, okay, I'm not so weird after all. And so I was like, wow, this is great. So that's what then it was, and I really I live right now. So from FIT, I living on 23rd Street, then I moved to 34th Street. I got a studio on 34th Street, then I got an apartment on 30th Street. And then I went from 30th Street on the west side to 30th Street on the east side, which is where I've now been so far now for 45 years.
Never far away.
No. So people say, "Where do you live?" And I say, "Oh, in Midtown Manhattan." And they go, "Wow, how can you?" I never lived there.
Right, you've always been here.
It's where I landed, and I just never left. It's my neighborhood. I've never known any other place.
You had some incredible opportunities that took you abroad.
Yes. So as a result of being here and that first opportunity with the Soul Club, okay, Clara Branch, because again it broadened sociability. I'm trying to say to get here and to learn how to art. A lot of art is fashion art in particular is collaboration. It's important, collaboration, and how to get in with a group. And to be involved with a group project.
Pull one another along.
Yeah, not a me.
Yes.
Okay, in fact, it appears to be, when we hear the name of a designer, we think, okay, this is whoever, Calvin Klein, Bill Blass, whoever, the designer. That's not true. That's not true. It's always a collaboration. So when you get there, you may have to wear many hats, you may have to wear every hat. And so that was the lesson and the journey to find out from working here and doing projects and working with fellow students or whatever, learning how to collaborate, not to dominate, how to just take part, find your place, and stay in your lane and do your part for the total success.
The collaboration.
Yeah. And so then when you get into the industry, that was something that was significant. That I found that I was able to come in and not have these expectations of just running the place or being the boss or being the head of whoever, whatever.
You're contributing.
Yeah. and learn the roles and learn, because that's what it is. If you can be dynamic and wonderful, but when you come to a company or a place, people are already in positions in various roles, okay? And if I come in dynamic and go, okay, fine, you're the president and I know how to do your job. I know how to sell, I know how to manufacture, I know how to do so and so. You're stepping on toe after toe after toe. We don't want you here. As wonderful as you may be, the peanut gallery is staring at you going, because you're threatening my job. Don't come in like that. What's the song? Came in like a wrecking ball. And I had all these fellow designers who would deal with their strong portfolios and strong personalities who weren't getting in, who weren't getting those jobs or whatever. Why? Because you're coming in too bombastic. No, slow down, hold on. You know what I'm saying? And so that was something I felt was something that I picked up from being here and with my fellow artists and people like Clara Branch who would say, okay,
Slow it down.
slow it down.
Slow it down. Bring the volume down a little.
Yeah, here's how you get in.
The guidance.
You want to get in, here's what you need to do. Sometimes you need to listen more than you speak. Well, I got a lot to say. But did you hear what I just said to you? Wise people listen. The wiser you become, the more mature you become more of a listener.
Do you remember our grandparents used to say, there's a reason why we have 2 ears and only one mouth, so that we have the capacity to listen more.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I all of those things I picked up from just being here and from learning.
What were some of the things some of the avenues that you pursued once you left FIT? What kinds of positions, what kinds of professional experiences? I know you went abroad for a minute.
Yeah.
Actually, for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Talk briefly about that.
Those were the opportunity. Well, okay,
What kinds of positions did you land?
For African American males on 7th Avenue at the time in the 70s, 80s. Okay. Let me back up. Just excuse me. I'm sorry, but I left out a whole major block here. After I graduated from FIT, okay, because of my family's academic,
Expectations.
Yes. My brother Jordan, who is my elder brother, went from again, he was one of these people, brilliant. Okay, that's what he's given to. So he was on a fast track. He zoomed through, got his bachelor's, master's, doctorate, like in about a 4 or 5 year period. They had these various programs for people who were smart enough to be able to handle so many credits at one point. So you could get your bachelor's in record time. You could get your master's in Zoom. So he went bam, bam, bam.
Now, I am sure Jordan would say there is no way in heck it was 4 years. He'll probably say it felt more like 40 years.
I never saw him read a book. I never saw him struggle. I never saw him dying. I was cringing at night just to pass a quiz, not to mention the midterm. And he was like, zoomed. Well, that expectation was on me as well. So when I graduated, everybody's going, what's next? I said, well, I'm going to look for a job. No, you're going to finish your education. I said, well, I have an associate's. Yeah, but you got to get your bachelor's. Well, where am I going to get it from? Well, I don't know. But that's what you're going to do. So I was seeking to find out what was the next higher level and or what's the highest level of education in fashion for fashion designers. And the answer was couture, Paris, high fashion. You want to be the top designer? You want to get the top education? Couture, Paris. So I said, okay, fine. I told my father, okay, the highest education you get in fashion is to become a couturier. He's like, let's go for it. And I go, okay, because I had already taken the New York challenge and I was successful. So I was ready for the next thing. Let's go. So right from FIT, I applied for school in Paris. I applied for school in London. I was accepted to the school in Paris. École de la Chambre Syndicale Couture. Okay. And they sent me the acceptance
Off
letter.
you go.
And they had me packed up and ready to go. So the same way I arrived in New York, green as corn, just absolutely I showed up in Paris, France. Hi, everybody. And I said, bonjour. I said, okay, I don't speak French, but don't worry, we'll get through this. And so I was there. I went to school for 3 years, got my couture certificate, and then I got an apprenticeship at the house of Scherer, Jean-Louis Scherer. And I worked there for like 3 years. And it occurred to me one day, I was sitting at a table, because there's no sewing machines, no pressing, ironing boards and pressing or whatever. Everything was couture, because everything is by hand. And with all this couture training, I was like, okay. But I was sitting at a table one day, 2-3 years in, and realized I'm sitting here with all these little old French ladies. And everybody, we were sitting there, we had one huge bridal veil that we were making at the house of Scherer. And we had to hand roll the hem. And it took about 4 of us sitting at this table to hand roll, and slowly finish, roll on a 1/16 of an inch and stitch, the 1/16 of an inch and stitch. It took hours. So as I was there, I started, like in prison, I got like, what are you in for?
How long?
Have you been here? And all these ladies are telling me, oh, I've been here for 30 years. I started here when I was 18 and now I'm 80. I started here when I said, goodness gracious. Then I thought about it like, am I going to be sitting here for the rest of my life?
Rolling ends.
Yeah. Oh, this is not what I expected. So somehow I went home with shivers and was like, okay, I got to go back to New York. Not to mention, every time I got a letter from home, we were at the club last night, we danced and we partied, we had a good time. Oh my God, you're missing it all. And I'm thinking, oh, I gotta go home. What am I doing here? So I came back home. So I got on 7th Avenue and I got my first job working as a, well, I went to many interviews and failed attempts that didn't work out. But my first job was with Willie Smith as an assistant. He welcomed me in, and he knew the plight of...
Say a little bit about Willie Smith. That hard to believe, but there may be young people who are not familiar with Willie Smith.
African-American designer, ahead of his time, who was working for a company called Digits at the time, and he, along with maybe Betsy Johnson and some others, had visions of fashion at the time. There was categorically, there was Missy clothing for the older lady, the younger lady, but what about the tween, children, women, what about the in-between? So there was no kind of real distinction. Girls wore children's wear up to a point where she could finally wear a dress and wear high heels or partial heels or whatever. There was kind of a gray zone between growing up and finally being able to dress as a woman, if you will. And so they were trying to acknowledge and bridge that gap into junior wear, the junior market. And so he was doing clothing that were addressing that demographic. Just the early days of 17 magazine, and acknowledging that is a market. So all of the things that he was doing was okay, but he had ambitions of wanting to start his own company and have his own, and he went through a lot of different challenges in trying to do that. So at the point at which I met him, he had already had several failed attempts, if you will, because you have to find a backer and all, but it's the learning process of if you think that you're going to have your own business. But he didn't want to continue working for these manufacturers. He wanted to have his name, and he wanted to have his own business, and he was just making every attempt to do it. If this didn't work, he would try again and again and again. So I think he went from paprika, cinnamon wear, to Willie Woo, to Willie something. He had a lot of different attempts that he made. He had his sister Tookie, Doris Tookie, whatever, and all. So I was so blessed that I met him, and again, it's like the experience of coming to FIT to find your
tribe,
kindred people, that just say, oh God, for someone to recognize you and go like, you, come with me. You're one of the chosen ones, come with me. And I didn't, another moment of, reality of just going, Jesus, I got this opportunity. And so I was there. So that launched me into 7th Avenue, where so many other people just couldn't break in. Collaboration. Stay in your lane. I was just there working as an assistant. I wasn't the designer. Don't be overly, just come in quietly, and listen, learn. That was my opportunity to do that. And so I was blessed to have had that opportunity, that entree, to be guided, and then he was doing, so his company at that time, he was a partner, four partners. So with Lori and her husband, who were 50%, a man named Om, who owned a factory in India. So that was the production arm, and then he was the creative partner. So the four of them had parts of this company that they formed, Willie Ware. And so, so the learning process because fashion is a business. Your sketches and your designing, wonderful, wonderful. It's a business. You could do as many sketches and make as many samples as you want to. You could have fashion show after fashion show. Do you have any orders? Yes, I got an order. Great. Somebody wants you to make 500 skirts. Can you make 500 skirts? What's involved in making 500 skirts? Can you make them? Can you get them manufactured? Can you ship them? What's involved in all of the money? You have to. When you get an order from somebody, this is a piece of paper. They place an order with you. There's no money. You have to finance getting these things made. You have to get the money. Go to the bank. Get it. Somebody has to finance this until you can make it and ship it. You don't get paid until you ship, and you don't get paid when you ship. It's the terms are net 30, net 60, net 90. So you won't get the money until 2 months, 3 months later after you ship. People go under long before that. You know what I'm saying? So this whole wonderful notion that I'm going to be a designer, I'm going to sell merchandise, I'm going to be in Macy's and Bloomingdale's. Well, there's a road to that. It doesn't happen quite as instantly as you think.
When we think about Clara Branch and those early formative years for you, to what extent do you think she was successful in positioning you all for industry? She certainly was successful in retaining students and in making sure that you all felt at home here at FIT. Anything you want to share in terms of what was some of the advice that she gave you and other designers in preparation for post-FIT?
Yeah.
Because being in college can be a very insular experience. It's a bubble in many ways.
Yeah.
FIT has the beauty of really being sort of a pre-professional setting. It's really preparing students for specific industries. What role did she play with that?
So now she taught sewing and construction, as well as she had a room. Her office was kind of like a fabric room.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I think that in the industry, people will contribute samples
And donated.
To the
Generously.
school. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then she would just parse it out to the students, all the students, whoever was in need of fabric or whatever.
What was she saying in the ears of students to prepare them for the reality beyond the walls of FIT?
Yeah. Well, so I go back to collaboration. Okay, asking people to realize you've got to work together. You can't get out there and think that it's just you. You alone, no, it will never happen. Okay, collaboration, work together, learn to work together, learn to accept, what's going on and find your way, to comply, to work, make your way in there, and go slowly and understand who you are and what your role is. So a lot of times she was trying to convince us to slow down, hold on, because everybody had these fanciful ideas, and she would go, hold on, you're not going to make it out there if you're coming along with all of that. People had their big egos, designers and their egos. And hold on a minute, slow down for a minute. And that would be her example, not because of here, because of there. If you don't learn this here, you're not going to make it there.
You'll pay there.
Yeah.
Here you can learn it and make some mistakes.
And yeah.
But there you pay the price.
You pay the price because you got to survive. Because you're not going to survive with that attitude. That would be her word. You're not going to go far with that attitude. You need to think about that. And so you would go like, Miss Branch, yes, Miss Branch, and go on. So I think in those ways that she was there to buffer, a lot of people's thinking about their grandness, and people who had those dreams of just walking out the front. The Don von Furstenberg story. I was going down Fifth Avenue, and Donna Vreeland said, "Hi, how are you?" And I said, "Oh, I've got some designs. Come on upstairs." And she looked, and the next thing I knew, I had a 10-page spread in Vogue magazine. Okay, is that going to happen to you? Maybe not. Maybe not. So that's where I'm saying, so everybody had these aspirations of sudden success. Here's how it's going to happen to me. I'm going to be walking through the airport and get discovered sitting in an ice cream parlor. Okay, maybe not. Maybe not. So slow down. So those were the things that she was there to try to get us to be a little realistic, okay, and to look at ourselves in the mirror and realize your assets, realize your strong suits, what you really can bring to the table, if anything. And maybe you have nothing at this moment to bring to the table, but you still were trying to get a seat at the table. Could you learn to get your foot in the door first before you go off onto all of that? Where can you go that you could get your foot in the door in any capacity to get your foot in the door, and then grow from there? Crawl before you walk concept. So those were the kind of basics that she would try to pass on to us. As she was very basic. She was not a fancy dresser. She was not a marvelous fashionista or any of the above.
But the wisdom.
Yeah, the wisdom was there, and so therefore a lot of people just went past, just like, because I'm not impressed with her. I'm not impressed with her because it's the story of Jesus. Jesus was not sent to go to sit with the wealthy, the rich. He came to help the poor, to sit, on the curb with them, to bring them up, because that's who needed it. And so therefore, she was there for the people who were willing to listen and the people who needed it. I was shy. I was scared to death. I just didn't see myself as, there were so many magnificent people here and huge egos. And certain students who came from wealthy families. This one girl, especially when I was not at FIT, but in Paris, Yves Saint Laurent's niece was in my class every day. She had no less than $8 or $9, $10,000 worth of clothes on every day. Never the same outfit, the same thing. This one girl, her father owned a diamond quarry, and he sent her a Mercedes car just to ride around, and she got bored with it one day, and she sent the car back home. These kind of kids are there. So what kind of magnificent, super egos and very often we were here in school with kids whose jobs were waiting for them.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Calvin Klein, for instance, his family was already in the business. There were various kids who were here whose families were already in the garment business. So their jobs, their fate, their future was waiting for them. Okay.
Excellent point.
And so therefore, again, you're up against certain people, and you graduate, and you come out and you go, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm at McDonald's." "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm working in here." I said, "Oh God, how did you get that job?" But times again, some of those relationships, somebody would say, "Well, come on with me. Yeah. Come on, I'll introduce you to my dad. Maybe you can sort the fabrics, or maybe you can do something." Foot in the door. Foot in the door. Collaboration, camaraderie, people that you've met. So that was sometimes, you would learn how to use those relationships, because those would be your future opportunities at some point on the avenue.
Do you think the model that operated with the Soul Club is one that is still viable now, given that, students are different, their exposure to industry, their opportunities that are made available are just very different. Do you think it's a model that could work now? Particularly for students of color, who still comprise the creative, underrepresented forces in industry, still, 50 years later.
Right. The basics are still there, okay? You still arrive here at school and just naive, okay, at 17, 18 years old. You still arrive here with all kinds of expectations, from where you're from, okay, wealthy family, not so wealthy family, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and you're here. And You have to find your identity, but can you? Who's here to, who's the, you know what I'm saying? It's kind of like that first point of contact, okay? Are you going to be repulsed, repelled, or is someone going to welcome you in? That's what's important. That first entry, that first point of contact, regardless of all of that, because we all are coming here to find ourselves, to hone our skills, to pursue who I think I am, but maybe not, to be exposed to more, to find out. I may start doing hair and find out, oh my God, there I am. I'm a hairstylist. I thought I was going to design shoes. I thought I was coming to do jewelry or whatever. But that point of contact, that first person, so that's who Clara Branch was in many cases, that first intimate person that was just quiet enough and not of herself, okay? So, look at me. Do you want to be like me? No. So someone who was quietly there to nurture you along and say, I want you to be you. And I want to just expose you to some of what's available.
And here are some things you need to know as you pursue.
And personal hygiene. Is there anybody out here who's going to say,
Look at your nails.
Yeah, come here, quietly, I think you'd be better off if you would do this or groom yourself better, or if you wouldn't wear so much makeup. I think you'd be better off. Who's going to tell you that?
But Leonard, to the extent that students now, young people, are so much more self-taught, there's so much more information available to them that they can teach themselves certain things.
Yeah.
And even if it's not the total picture, they're starting off with an assumption that they have enough to get their foot in the door. They think they have enough, that they know enough to get their foot in the door. So I guess I ask the same question. Do you think, as a model, that kind of guidance, the platform like a Soul Club, is still viable now when you have young people who presume that they don't necessarily need it because they already know enough, they think, to surpass what perhaps a Clara Branch imparted?
Okay, so then today's model, if you will, would be, I think, to say, okay, fine, I understand TikTok is there and the technology that's out there, TED Talks are there, all kind of instructional information is there. You could take a course online, never go to school, and learn as much. You may not have the credentials, if you will, but I mean, you could learn, like I said, on your own, and tutor yourself through these tutorials that are there. Yeah, okay. So what would you be missing, if anything? And constantly we have these infomercials that are saying, hey, I sit on the side of my bed every day and work for 15 minutes, and now I'm a multimillionaire, and I'm only 24 years old. And you go, okay, what am I doing wrong? So yes, all of that is out there, but a lot of those people crash and burn. You know what I'm saying? Because they're still without the fundamentals, without the base. You know what I'm saying? So they just got in the plane and just learned how to fly. They never learned how to land.
The how-tos without the wisdom.
Yeah. And the tweaking that goes along with that, because if you go along slowly, you'll learn the lesson that comes along with the process. Okay? So just to go from point A to D, I'm there and I got the money or whatever. You're not going to, where's your financial wisdom?
Where's the sustainability of it?
And you don't have it. And so therefore I say, to come here and to get someone to get you to hold on a minute, and just get a little bit of a base, some basic information, some just to understand that you can't just, like on TV, the ingredients are right there and the bowl is here, you dump this, mix it up and stick it in the oven and do whatever, and they reach under the table and here's the cake. What could go wrong? You know what I'm saying? And go to Trader Joe's and just buy it, put it in the microwave oven. You don't have to get crazy, And so that's the world that we're in today. And it's so fast-tracked, it's so instant that you don't have to go through all those steps.
Or at least they don't think they do.
They don't think they do. Okay.
See, I know I asked you the question, but I honestly think that model of guidance coupled with a platform is probably more important now than ever before.
Right.
In large measure because there is such a lack of guidance. It's all so much more self-taught.
Well, instant though. Everything. You don't have to
Yes.
wait. You don't have.
Yes.
The Beyonce just. It just seems like she woke up yesterday and started singing,
Right.
and she's on a concert tour and she's successful. Boom. You know, why can't I do that? The rappers that are out here, whatever. You know, every example is in front of you. People who just woke up yesterday and were, millionaires the next morning. It's so easy. It's so instant. They didn't really go through all those challenges. What are you talking about? It's, I don't need all that. And I don't need to go to school, and I don't need to struggle, and I don't need to learn, and I don't need to do any of the above. I don't have to get dressed, I don't have to wear that, I don't have to do this, I don't have to do any of the above. And it just seems so, and now they're on an award show, winning Grammys, and whatever. And then if you do the backstory, all they did was took a bath. and they were in, I married so-and-so, and that made me famous, So it's just like, it's so instant right now. So it's reversed. Okay, you learn and you come to it and you're successful. Now it's reversed. You're successful and you have to learn
How to sustain
how
it.
to sustain it.
How to sustain
That's
it.
what has happened. The world has suddenly turned this whole thing of fame and fortune. A lot of people who got instant success and instant fame are bored now. Actually, who were child stars and whatever, are really now has-beens. For you to look at, I was looking at the cast of Good Times, the show, or one of those used to be on TV, and names when I was younger, who were dynamic because they got their opportunities then, quick, overnight they were successful, and now that they're in their 50s. They're such has-beens. It's like, and now they should be in the prime of their careers, and they themselves are over it. They're retired because they had success. I take for granted, for example, a Michael Jackson, a child star who was there right at 5 years old. So where is it to go from there? But he didn't have a childhood, so he had to come back
To relive it.
Yeah. So I think that's very much so a lot of what's going on now. That these kids are coming in, and it's just the way is made for them. And if someone is talented, there's people out there ready to grab you quick and say, "Oh my God, there's so many dynamic ideas. Forget about that. Come with me. I'm going to give you the money. I'm going to give you, overnight, quick." And so they just get there. You can. It's. Again, you could be an influencer on YouTube, and all of a sudden you got so many hits.
1 million friends or whatever it is. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
and boom, you're overnight success. Everyone's following you, and you're wonderful. Okay, so what happens after that? You know what I'm saying? There's no. You have to come back to reality. Come back to try to. And I think there's this singer. Not Tony Braxton was one of the people who had overnight success and millions of dollars and suddenly lost it or whatever. But Anita Baker, I saw an interview with her, and she said, that she had that success and wonderful, and then she realized she had no life, no family, none of the joys of living, and so she stopped. She came out of the and went back to find the love of her life and to try to have a human existence, okay? Because all of that is so superficial, and it just the grind. So the same thing in fashion. It's the same thing. You can get out there and boom, overnight. It's not sustainable. It's just not. It's just a grind, a hustle that you can get on, and it can burn you up very quickly, okay? So if you want to live and you want to experience what you're doing as you're doing it, you can enjoy it, you can appreciate it, and you have something to follow to go along, a legacy, that you can go along and see your timeline and have somewhere to go. But if you're there, there's nowhere to go. You can only come back. So that's what I'm saying. So I hope that somebody answered your question.
Yeah. I want to thank you.
Thank you.
We have lots of conversations and
Yeah.
discussions, and this will be among my most memorable.
Well, I hope so. I just want to say that I
Final
have
thoughts.
blessed. I have been blessed to. FIT is home. Again, right from high school, I came right here, and I really have never left. I came here. I went to Europe. I came back. I took some night courses because I didn't have any place. I got back to New York and I was lost. Once again, I had to start all over again, kind of socializing. So I came back to FIT and got back into my social group. And then I got back into the industry finally with Willie. And then I finally got a job and I was working in Korea. And then I was working in China for a while. Then I worked in the Philippines. And then I got another job working, in Indonesia. And I just got all these fabulous opportunities to travel and go all these different places. And each time I went and came back, I came back home. And I thought, and then a teaching opportunity came up. So then I taught for 5 minutes. I got a little evening course, and I was teaching whatever. And then I got back in the industry, and then some other things ensued, and I was happy, whatever. And then that sort of came to an end, and I came back home. So every year, this is my 50th year of being, since the day that I entered into this door, this is my 50th year at FIT. And so I have to look back at that and realize how blessed I've been to have been here and be home. And again, to have the angels, that's what I call them, the angels, waiting at the door for me to bring me through this portal and say, okay, and I step, it's like the time tunnel, you're stepping through the portal and boom, you're in this land of amazement. That's for you. And other people, because I came for the interview and many other people were not accepted. I have friends or whatever who have many times said to me, I never got past the interview process. I don't know what happens, why. So it's not for everybody. It's only for a select few who do get accepted, who get in, however it manages to happen, to get in. And so I'm blessed. I'm blessed that I've been one of the chosen to have come, and so I try my best to give it back as often as I can by way of exhibits, by way of lectures, comments, anything I can do. Mentoring, right, to give back, to this wonderful place that has given me my whole life.
It's giving back, moving forward, yeah?
Yes.
Kudos to Clara Branch and kudos to the Soul Club.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you for this opportunity.